Born in 1917, James Matthews grew up in New Orleans and graduated from a Jesuit high school where he attended a civilian military training camp for 4 summers. He enlisted as a second lieutenant and was sent by the US Army to England in 1942 as an operations officer in the Transportation Corps. Like most veterans, he is modest about his military career, but we get an indication of the significance of his role because although he was based in the basement of Southampton Civic Centre, he was awarded several medals, including the Bronze Star, which is the fourth highest award a United States serviceman can receive for a heroic or meritorious deed performed in a conflict with an armed enemy, and he retired as a full colonel. So what was his contribution to the war effort that merited such recognition? In an interview, he says he was responsible for loading the ships for the D-Day landings and was eventually promoted to Director of Operations. This does not sound the most glamorous of postings until we realise that where he was based, Southampton, was the headquarters for the US Army during D-Day and Operation Overlord. We can find out more from the plaque outside his World War II office at the Civic Centre in Southampton, which states, "The Civic Centre was used as the headquarters by the 14th Major Corps US Army during World War II, and that between D-Day, June the 6th, and the end of hostilities, orders were issued directing the embarkation of the American armies, who together with their allies sailed from Southampton docks to liberate Europe. During the operation, over 2.25 million troops, 250,000 vehicles and millions of tons of supplies of the US Army were shipped through this port." These few lines start to give us an indication of the role Matthews played in World War II. The port of Southampton was a springboard for the liberation of Europe, but perhaps because of the secrecy at the time surrounding Operation Overlord, the achievement of his unit is not really appreciated. In his report, the Allied Naval Commander of Operation Neptune, Admiral Ramsay, explains, "From the outset of detailed planning, it was clear that success would be largely dependent upon the ability to exercise close and continuous control of the thousands of ships and craft taking part. This overall control would have to embrace control of landing of all types of shipping and craft, control of convoy sailing, control of tugs, and control of ship repairs. Without it, time would inevitably be lost, and the best use could not be made of the great resources given to the operation to establish our forces ashore and then to reinforce them as quickly as possible." Ramsay goes on to explain, "It was found necessary during planning to set up new organisations to control various aspects of the operation during the vital few weeks in which the tempo of the initial assaults had to be maintained at the highest pitch. Turco, turn-round control organisation, BUCO, build-up control organisation, COREP, control repair organisation, COTUG, control tug organisation, accordingly came into being and were instrumental in the success achieved." So what was it that Matthews actually did during the war? The principal functions of his unit were to control the build-up of personnel and vehicles and to set priorities for their movement as desired by the tactical commands and in line with available shipping and craft. Under the control of BUCO, the subordinate agencies had general control over the movement of troop units from their home stations to embarkation points, issuing instructions for movement to transportation agencies concerned. At daily meetings, BUCO made alterations in priorities desired by the tactical commanders and modified the planned allocation of shipping and craft to meet current requirements. BUCO broke down the modified priority lists and lists for the several embarkation sectors, showing the sequence in which units would embark. Matthews, as the Director of Operations in the Transportation Corps, was responsible for calling up troops from the staging areas and loading them onto the vessels for deployment across the English Channel. Although BUCO itself remained in the United Kingdom shortly after D-Day, an organisation called Little BUCO was set up on the far shore and in effect functioned as BUCO's advanced echelon. However, the official record only tells half the story. There are accounts of units arriving from the US without previous notification, others that seem to disappear, hold-ups and turnarounds, made life for the service personnel working in Bucco almost impossible, driving many to the verge of a nervous breakdown. Of course, notwithstanding any timetables, battle losses made the demands of Little Bucco even more complicated. Perhaps Admiral Ramsay can explain the reason this achievement is not properly understood even today. He says, because in the event the movement of over 5,000 ships and craft proceeded smoothly and to plan, and because despite bad weather, the Allied armies and air forces were landed and reinforced, if not quite as quickly as the optimum planning figure, at least more quickly than the enemy reinforced his forces by land, it may now appear that the size and complexity of the naval problem was somewhat exaggerated. This was not the case. That the operation proceeded smoothly and according to plan was the result of the hard work and foresight of the many thousands concerned in its preparation and of the determination and courage of the tens of thousands in the Allied navies and merchant fleets who carried out their orders in accordance with the very highest traditions of the sea. Matthews was happy to receive the decorations for his service, and after he was discharged from the military, he returned to his job with the telephone company.